I think one thing we need to go back to is why it's important. Why do we need to do nutrient timing?
Yeah. So I think when you look at it, it's let's take it from an athlete perspective. It's probably the easiest way to conceptualize this. So there's two reasons, both of which are intertwined. One is to optimize performance, and the second part is to optimize recovery to further optimize performance, right? So there is both a single session effect in terms of doing what you can to fuel for that work you're about to do, especially in competition, in matches and things like that. And then the other part revolves around your training, which is now what do I do after this or even during it to facilitate me being ready to train again, right? And so if you look at it, weird comparison, I know, but bear with me on this. But if we use anabolic steroids as an example here, one of the things that they allow you to do is train harder more frequently, right? It facilitates recovery. So taking that now to just purely the nutritional realm, if you can do things that allow you to train harder more frequently, you are going to facilitate greater adaptation, right? You're going to win more races. You're going to win more matches. You're going to get bigger. So when we look at it from that standpoint, the reason it starts to matter is because of what it does to set the stage for sort of this long-term progress, as well as what we're doing within it. And again, do you have to pay attention to this every time, every day? No, there's going to be some times where it's not a particularly hard workout or it was easy to adjust for. But then there's other times, especially in the peak of your training, where you want to dial everything up as ideally as you can in that scenario, because what good does it do to not, right? And I think that to me is the why behind it. And then I think from a more global standpoint, if you're looking at more general population, it really revolves around optimizing health and getting the most out. If we look at it as a return on investment, I think the reality is the very little it actually costs you to pay attention to the timing helps you get that much more out of the efforts you're investing in your training, the money you're spending on your food, the time you're putting into trying to take care of yourself. Why not maximize that ROI? Because when you do that, if you look at your capacity as like a bank account, in any given week, you only have so much money to withdraw, right? And for an athlete, the most important thing is rent's due every week, right? When you have a game, when you have a match, that's the one you have to budget for. You do not want to go overdrawn in that. So you budget throughout the week to do this. Well, if you do all these other little things right in terms of how you structure your training and how you feed around these things, what you do is you increase your account, where you have more money to spend, or it takes a lot, or you're earning a lot of interest, right? Because now that interest on that investment is just that much greater. And so now you make progress from season to season, from year to year. So I think to me, that's why it matters, because it may not be the single biggest, most important thing. You know, your consistency of training and your sleep and recovery, that's all going to be a part of it too. But it's not something that I would ignore. And, one example I use is we work with college athletes a lot, right? So they may have training in the morning and then they all have to class. So one of the reasons we make sure they eat right after training is I don't know when they're going to eat again, right? So timing for us is a pragmatic, practical issue where it's like, why would I not make sure they get food in them as soon as we're done? Because now they got to go off to class and it may be hours before they eat again. I don't want them in that state for too long. At least we've kind of topped off and gotten the process started in that case. So there's a very practical side to this too.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge reason for it, because most people, athletes, regular people, are busy people.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Whether you're just going to the gym, in your lunch break, well, firstly, you're working out rather than having lunch. And then, you're going to be aware that you've got deadlines, meetings or whatnot. It's quite easy to see a scenario where you get your workout, you go back to the office, and then you completely miss a feed. Yeah. So having that protein or protein carbohydrate post-workout shake, it is a relevant strategy. And yes, some people will go, well, how about a food first approach? Why can't we just have, pasta and chicken or rice and, beef? Yeah, but you can't cook that up in the locker room. right? So they both work, I think, though, is important.
Yes,
so,
absolutely. Yeah. And I agree. Food first, in terms of like, we want you to eat food. Like, and actually from a metabolism and from a health standpoint, whole foods are a largely better source throughout the day. But there's a time and a place for supplements, for processed food, to give you what you need really quick. I mean, can you imagine if you're in a triathlon, you're on the bike, and you're like, okay, I can either have this gel or I can munch away on a bagel, right? Like, I mean, now you're choking down bread versus just putting goo, and drinking it down. There's a time and a place, right? So it's not, to me, it's not an either or. And it's so weird to me when people treat it that way. Like, you don't need supplements. No, you don't need them. But if you want to perform at your highest, you may want them, right? Because there's a time and a place for this. But yeah, I've never understood. I think the discourse has just become so polarizing for no good reason. And I feel like we've lost the middle ground where it's like, yeah, eat real food, and here's some supplements that can help you too, right? I don't understand why we've gone so extreme on that.